Right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Elevenses at 11. You're watching Kevin Williams here live with my show. Got some stories for you today. Got some news from around the motorcycling world, which we'll have a look at in just a moment. I'll be talking about partial release of the lockdown in Guernsey. I'll give you an update on what's going on with the survival skills e-course, because there has been something of a replanning of what I've been doing with that. We've got Total Control, the book by Lee Parks, which I'll be reviewing as part of my motorcycling library. And last but not least, I will be looking at some shoulder exercises that we can do to try and keep our biking fitness up, something that I've been covering over the last 6 weeks. So stay tuned to the end if you can. If you can't, don't forget you can catch up here on Facebook, or you can head over to my YouTube channel and find the recording over there. Survival Skills UK is the channel. Remember that all important UK on the end, or you will get someone demonstrating the use of hunting knives and that kind of thing. If you've got a question, a comment, anything to say, suggestions for another show, get back to me using the comment box, and I will respond when I go off the live show. So, all right, on with the first story then. The sad news is that the news feed is still full of motorcycle crashes, and it's still full of incidents where motorcyclists are continuing to crash with no help needed from anybody else, which isn't the kind of thinking that most of us have about bike crashes, but quite frankly, we're not doing too well out there. Sadly, a 33-year-old in Preston was killed in a crash on Wednesday when his Kawasaki, the police said, failed to negotiate bend. A newspaper photo of the scene shows that the crash actually happened on a residential street, bog standard kind of road that you find in any residential area. And the wall of the house which the rider crashed into set some distance back from the road. So what happened there is anybody's guess. The police have appealed for witnesses for that one. But what's telling really is that they have said that they are interested in the manner in which the motorcycle was ridden prior to the incident. So that may give you a hint. Meanwhile, same evening, different part of the country, over in Suffolk, emergency services spent what they described as 2 extremely challenging hours trying to rescue a motorcyclist who crashed into a tree at the Orwell Country Park and suffered serious chest injuries. Now, he didn't just need an ambulance, the fire service also attended. The air ambulance itself was scrambled. And rather remarkably, the coastguard were also called out. So what happened there? Up to I have no idea. Yesterday, Humberside police were appealing for witnesses following a crash which happened at about 11 o'clock in the morning between a red Vauxhall Corsa and a red MZTS 150 motorcycle, which again left a rider with serious and potentially life-changing injuries. Now, I shouldn't really speculate, but having looked at the map where the crash happened is out to the east of Hull, out on the way to Spurn Head. It's a nice little rural area, little villages, some nice windy roads. And whilst it's entirely possible, of course, that the rider was making an essential journey, you can't help but wonder, MZTS 150, bit of a classic. Anyway, no idea what's going on out there. What else do we know? Well, registration numbers have fallen. Let me just try and get the relevant bit up on screen. I've been playing with my setup here, so I should be able to move on to the next image. There we go. If you have a quick look at that, what you'll see is that bike registrations are way down. Not really very surprising. They've fallen on between 80 and 90% in virtually all categories there. Registrations fell from just under 10,000 to 1,623, so that's a drop of 83%. Interestingly, what does top the list? Well, and I use the term top seller advisedly, 21 Z125 Hondas, that's the monkey bike, were registered, and that made it the highest selling naked 125, rather surprisingly. But the Suron Light B, which is a road legal dual sport electric motorcycle, also sold quite well. The bike is fairly reasonably priced at just £4,500. It doesn't go particularly far, 50 miles. It doesn't go particularly fast. It does 45, but it just weighs 50 kilos and you can recharge it in 3.5 hours. So my guess is that some of those have probably been sold to key workers, and certainly the distributor is offering them with a 10% discount. Top selling scooter was a Yamaha NMAX, which is even cheaper, 3,200, and 97 of those have been sold. And again, I very much suspect that they've probably gone to key workers. Okay, elsewhere in the news, bikers have thanked the Director of Public Health on Guernsey for recognising motorcycling as a permitted form of daily exercise. It's part of a gradual easing of restrictions, which allowed a 2-hour entitlement to do things such as fly a light aircraft and recreational boating, which probably tells you more about the social circumstances of people living on Guernsey than anything else. It's joined golfing, singles tennis, and one-to-one sports coaching. So walking, cycling, running, and sea swimming have always been permitted in Guernsey, but motorcycling has now been added to the list of possible exercises. Various people have said that they're very keen now to get out on their bikes, and they've been fed up with polishing them. So, as one person says, Rocket X owner, we fully accept the need for the lockdown. We wouldn't want to put anybody at risk, but I think it's a safe activity because we're all dressed in helmets and riding on our own. So as long as everybody rides safely, and obviously we need to watch out for pedestrians. So he's pleased to hear that news and looking forward to getting out. Pillion riding is also permitted, but not outside of a household bubble, as the news item puts it. Okay, a quick comment on that. I was chatting to a buddy of mine who lives down near Leatherhead, and he was saying that there are as many motorcycles out on the roads as ever. And he says which presumably suggests that a lot of people are riding outside of lockdown, because we're not permitted recreational riding yet here in the UK. Okay, now just a quick reminder that you are watching Elevenses with Kevin Williams, and still to come, we are going to be looking at Lee Parks and his book on total control. We'll have a quick look at my e-course and how that's panning out, and then we'll move on to some exercises to keep the shoulder fit and mobile. Right, okay, so we might as well look to improve our riding while we're locked down. There's absolutely no reason we can't continue to try to work on riding skills. And of course, riding books are a DIY guide to better biking. So, there's no reason that we can't learn from reading if we are sensible about where we get our information from. I'm always a bit dubious about sending people out to look at YouTube and things, because there is some iffy information out there. But, a well-respected author writing a well-respected book is a good source of information. Over the years, I've actually created a fair old library of motorcycles. If I can perhaps show you a slide of some of the books I've got. I'll just have to get around to the right picture again. I won't let slide on to the next image. There's always a technical glitch, isn't there? Where's my image? There it is. Right, there's some of my library, not my total library, but some of it. And the book I'm going to be looking at is the one that you can see there right at the front. It's Total Control. That's the version I've got. I've got a new picture there of the new cover. The first thing to say really is that the graphic there gives away the intended audience. The track is really where Lee Parks comes from. Before I get on to the book, though, one of the things I will say is that we tend to read some very standard issue books in the UK. Roadcraft, obviously, Police Rider's Handbook. Everybody tends to pick that up and read it. And the IAM have also got their own flavour of advanced riding book. And they're okay. They go as far as they go, but they come from a very limited viewpoint. This is what I keep saying to people who haven't read any of the other books. There is a whole world of motorcycling outside of the UK, and if you only read the products from the UK, you're getting a very limited subset of what's going on. And some of the best books in biking, and I see that, and I do mean it, some of the best books are written out on the other side of the Atlantic by American authors. Now, I mentioned Pat Hahn's book, Ride Hard, Ride Smart, the other day as one of the best books I've read. What about Total Control? Now, Lee Parks is a US racer turned author. He's been holding his 1 and 2 day street-oriented clinics on parking lots around the US since 1999. So that's 20 years. He ran it under franchise here in the UK, so some people here have heard of Total Control. And he was handed the contract to run training in California a few years back. And I'm actually hoping to have a chat with Brittany Morrow, who's one of their instructors out there. So what do I find about that book? Well, as I said, the front cover is a bit of a giveaway with a sort of track graphics on the front of it. And if you didn't get that, the back cover gives it away. It says, Parks demystifies the techniques used by top racers and demonstrates how to apply them to high-performance street riding. Okay, now in the edition that I've got, the first paragraph title is actually The Problem of Learning to Go Fast. Now, I have an instant problem with that, because my take on this is always learn where to go slow first and foremost, because then when you have eliminated all the places that might make you consider slowing down, then and only then can you think about going too quickly. Now, let's face it, hardly anybody crashes from riding too slowly, but the streets and YouTube are littered with examples of riders who twisted the throttle in the wrong place. So we need to sort out where we keep speed down, and then and only then do we learn about going fast. That's as true on the track, with my limited experience of track riding, as it is on the road. Something else I don't particularly get on with Park's book, and that's his writing style. He constantly makes authoritative sounding statements and doesn't back them up. The opening section is on traction, and he rightly says, to quote, "It's important to know what traction is and how it works." And then he covers in quick succession hard, cold, soft, hot, tyres, road conditions, suspension, braking, cornering, acceleration, lean angle. And they're all a bit soundbite. Nothing in the chapter really explains anything about the fundamental question, why do tyres actually stick to the road? And that's because Parks says a little bit later on, it doesn't matter. He actually goes on to say, as you can see, there are many things that affect traction. Learning to manage them all might sound overwhelming at first. However, by reading the following chapters, you can learn exactly what you need to know without being bogged down by over-sophisticated academic theories. Just stay focused on the drills as you do them, and traction will take care of itself. Right, now, you can call me over-sophisticated and academic if you like, because I do like thinking about what I'm doing on the bike, but I like to know what's going on. I'm not going to take it on trust that the rubber is going to stick to the tarmac. I need to know what happens. And ultimately, we're all going to have a moment sooner or later when the tyres don't do what they're supposed to do. The tarmac doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And if we understand what went wrong, because we've looked into a bit of that academic theory, we'll have a far better idea of why we had a problem and what to do next time to avoid it or to recover. I'll have a better idea whether it was me being ham-fisted with the bike and just asking the machine to do too much, or whether the factor was something external. Whether it was the bike itself and the rubber that we're using, or whether it was in fact something to do with the road surface. If I know that, if I've got a chance of understanding why things went wrong, I've got a better chance of making sure I don't do it again. Doing it because you're told that it's right, basically for me, doesn't actually work. I think we need to know the answers. Okay, there are useful diagrams and illustrations throughout the text, but although the book's 200 pages long, it's actually full of glossy photos, and many of those don't really add anything at all to the text. And if there's one other thing that really annoys me, it's that Lee Park seems to find it necessary to start most chapters in the book by gurning at the camera personally. So the next area is that when you move into reading the text as well, you'll also find that there's little about riding on the road. Forget that tagline about high performance street riding. The bulk of that advice is really aimed at street riders taking a bike onto the track. Now, there's a place for that. Some riders do want to get out there on to the sort of Brands Hatch or something, and for people like that, it will be good. There are pages on setting up suspension, and if you actually need to tweak the suspension because you are fast enough on the track to feel the difference, then it will help. But most street riders really don't need to do more than set the suspension up for the kind of riding they do, and maybe modify it if they're taking a passenger or loading the bike up with luggage or going somewhere for a holiday. But we don't tweak the suspension every single time we go out. So I find that over complicated. So if you're a complete track novice, then I'd say the book is a reasonable starting point, and it probably will make you a faster rider overall. Maybe not a safer one, but maybe it would make more sense if, a bit like Roadcraft, it was read in conjunction with a practical riding clinic. I don't know. The book's on the second edition. The only real change apparently has been to the graphics. So if you got the first edition, I doubt you'll get much more out of the second edition. If it's a new book to you and you like the idea of doing a track day, and by all means get out there and do one, they are good fun, then that, I suspect, is the real audience, and I'll give it a qualified thumbs up on that point. But if you are a road rider, particularly if you are a novice road rider and you really want to learn how to go faster on corners, then I would give it a miss. It's really not the book to do that job. Okay, so where are we? We're on Survival Skills 11Ses show. You're watching Kevin Williams here, and we have two more stories come. I'm just about to talk about my course, but I'll finish off by talking about some exercises we can do with the shoulders. Now, the e-course, you may remember, I tried launching that about 5 weeks ago, and I have to say that I was very disappointed that the first effort actually produced a virtually zero interest. Although I got a number of people signing up, I really, none of them actually made it to the end of the first section that I produced, which is a bit of a disappointment. Now, what I tried to do, just to explain briefly, is I tried to recreate the I ask, you ponder, and then you come up with an answer approach that I use on my practical training courses. It's, in many ways, it's the best way for people to actually learn what writing is all about, because what you find when you are using, you'll know the answer to the question that I'm asking, and if you don't know, then I can usually draw it out of you by getting you to think about what you're doing and coming up with the correct answer. Obviously, if you get it wrong, then I will jump in and correct it. But what it turns out is that most of the answers we do know for ourselves. We just need to think about things in the right way, and that's classic classroom coaching technique. It's used, right across the board. It's very different from the old style chalk and talk training teaching that was often delivered in schools when I was a boy, when teacher wrote things on the blackboard and you copied it down and wrote it. But it turns out that that's what people seem to want. And that possibly is due to the YouTube and all those other platforms like YouTube, which have somebody sort of delivering a piece of information to you, and you're watching it and taking it all in. It's gone backwards, in my opinion, backwards to those old chalk and talk days. As I say, what I hoped was I could use my e-learning platform to recreate the e-course that I ran 7 or 8 years ago. And the only reason I stopped doing that was because the platform folded, and I haven't managed to find a suitable replacement until this year. But in those courses, I asked the questions and I got people to answer them, but nobody got past about halfway down the page. So I suspect that we've been given so many easy rides by YouTube that that's what people are actually looking for. So I'm going to have a second crack at it, and this time I won't be asking you the serious input kind of questions that I did a few weeks ago. I will offer you a mix of written stuff with some videos embedded in that, and you can still comment on it. But the difference from watching random videos on YouTube is that you will still get a structured pathway through my output. You'll be able to follow it in a methodical fashion from post to post. So I'm taking you through initially some of the background about why survival skills courses are different to conventional advanced training. And I have had this discussion many, many times with other people, but I really do believe that I have a different approach. And then we'll be moving on to the content. But again, I'm going to do that in the same way that I take you out on a course on the road. It'll be a building block approach, so that we start with relatively straightforward concepts, and then we move forward through more complicated pieces of information, and also so that we address the risk elements first before we get on to the sort of faster riding bit, which people seem to be interested in, perhaps not surprisingly. Now, obviously, when you get back out on the road, there's no reason that you can't apply this information to your riding, but also there's no reason you can't keep going back to it and using it as an aid memoir, as it were. So the idea is to get some very practical training out of the e-course. It's not simply a book theory session. There really is practical elements to everything, even though it's online. So to keep things even more simple for you, I'm moving that content to my Coffee content page, and you'll be able to access it over there for as little as £3 a month. You can pay more if you want to. You can subscribe for as long or as short a time as you like, as long as you're a subscriber. You have access to all the information over there. Still work in progress at the moment, but the first content has gone up. I do need to sort the index out, and I'll do that later this afternoon when I've had some lunch. But I do hope to see some of you over there in the near future. Now, okay, don't forget, you can join me here today at 11 o'clock, and I will be running these shows Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. On Monday, we will have a very special guest talking about bike setup. Suspension expert Dave Moss will be joining us from California. I've pre-recorded the interview, so I'll just play that off. There will be 2 bits of it, so to keep it a little bit shorter, and we'll run one half of it Monday, which will be about posture issues, and then we'll be talking suspension tuning Monday week. So that'll give you something to look forward to tomorrow. Okay, now final story of the day. Unless we're lucky enough to be using bike as a key worker, probably off the bike, except perhaps for doing short essential trips on it. Many of us have actually sawned up the bikes and parked them up completely. That's what I've done. No point really having a bike that I'm not able to ride, so it's completely parked up. So I've been talking for the last 5 or 6 weeks about keeping some fitness, because as I've said, once we're off the bike, we're actually losing the muscle tone in the muscles that we actually use for riding. Anyone who remembers learning to ride will remember how knackering it was. Particularly, even the youngsters will find that they get aches and pains from riding a motorcycle, and if we're just a little bit older than that, it really does hurt. Similarly, even if you do short rides, if you've gone out on a long journey, amazing number of people who think they can commute to work for half an hour and then jump on the bike and do a 12-hour ride to the south of France, and they discover when they get to the end of it just how achy and painful long distance riding can be. And the reason is that the muscles lose their muscle tone. They haven't got the muscle tone. So we need to keep thinking about how we're going to work on our muscles to keep them moving. Now, one area that I haven't talked about yet, but probably, well, I should do, so I am, the shoulders. The shoulder joint up here is something, it's a ball and socket joint, and it connects, obviously enough, the upper arm to the shoulder blade at the back there, and that's how it connects to the torso. Now, the thing is that the shoulder is the joint with the widest range of movement in the body. We can take our arm in all sorts of directions, forwards, backwards, up and down. So that joint has a huge range of movement. And the problem is that the moment we get a big range of movement in a joint, 2 issues. It means it's structurally fairly weak. It's technical, the word they use is unstable, and so it's held together by a whole bunch of sort of bits of string, as it were, cartilage and ligaments, which all pull it together. The trouble is that they damage. And the other issue that we suffer with joints is that if we don't actually use that full mobility on a regular basis, you actually start to lose that mobility. The joint starts to stiffen up. We tend to think that it's only elderly people who suffer these problems, but in fact, from round about 40, we all start to lose flexibility in the joint. So it's a really useful thing to start working on things like this, issues like this, fairly early on. The problem is that if we lose some of this flexibility and then we suddenly try to use it again, we can expect damage to occur. We may get just some strain and inflammation actually inside the joint itself. We can end up with pulled muscles actually in the muscles that surround the shoulder. You can damage the cartilage that's actually in between the bones, and you can tear muscles as well if you try to do it. So there are a bunch of benefits to working on muscle, the sort of joint. First of all, you decrease the risk of injury, sometimes called prehab. We increase the muscle activation by working the joint. You improve that range of motion. You regain some of the flexibility, and then basically you'll reduce the pain that will occur when you get back to using it normally. And long term, it also improves quality of life. Now, I have to admit, I never gave much thought to this kind of exercise years ago because, when I was young, it worked as it was supposed to. And it really isn't until about 4 or 5 years ago that I started to notice that some of the old injuries that I've suffered over the years are starting to come back. I've got particularly iffy right knee, and that's from a combination of falling off endurance racing moped, having a bad crash where I got a foot caught in the bike chassis, and I had my foot twisted. I think it's 270 degrees in the wrong direction. So I was laying one way and my foot was pointing completely the opposite direction, basically, and a bit more. That bloody hurt, I can tell you. I also had a ski crash, which injured the same knee. And it was, it all recovered and everything seemed to be hunky-dory till about 5 years ago when I just was getting some real pain in that knee. It was achy riding the bike, but it also hurt walking up gentle slopes. So I'd started a regime of exercises using those elastic bands I showed you recently, which has pretty much eliminated the knee pain. But what I would say is, don't wait till it hurts. Exercise now. Even in your 40s, mild fitness and exercise regime really does help with future damage. Back to the shoulders. The shoulders are used for a lot of things, reaching up to something on a shelf, reaching down to lift something, reaching out to do something as well. And if you think about riding the bike, where do we ride? Well, we ride with our arms out in front of us, so our shoulders are rotated outwards. That's not where they normally sit. So, as I've mentioned, one of the problems of riding is bad posture. Bad posture really does destroy machine control. And if our arms aren't strong enough to take their own weight while they're stretched out in front of us, we're going to lean on those bars. I've already talked about the need to strengthen the body core, but the arms and the shoulders play a part in that too. So they will really hurt when you get back on the bike. Trust me on that. There are a bunch of simple exercises on the internet you can do. There are lots and lots of them out there. I've just picked one, not quite at random, but because I did look at it fairly carefully. But have a look to see what the exercise is. I'll put the link up already. Note that the weight of the arm, when the exercise is being done, the arm is being rested on something. So the exercise rotates that joint at the shoulder, but there's no weight on the arm. And you don't start with weights and things like that. As I said, you can start to add those after you've got flexibility and after you've got some basic strength. You're not trying to turn into Arnie with these exercises. We're working on increasing flexibility and strengthening all the joints and tendons. So have a look round and remember, when you start light. Start with repetitions, start with short sessions, but the important thing is that you exercise consistently, keep at it. You will not gain all this flexibility by doing a couple of days work at it and then giving it up. You must keep moving, you must keep working on it, but it really does only take a couple of minutes a day. And you will see some significant improvements over time. As I said, my knee is completely different to how it was feeling 5 years ago. Much less pain in it. So, okay, that's enough for today. Next week on the same slot, I will just finish off by looking at some exercises to do with our neck, because if you think about it, the neck also moves when we're riding the bike, and the head is already a heavy item which causes neck strain, and most cyclists then go and perch a couple of kilos of helmet on top of it. So we really do need to work on those neck muscles. Right, okay, so don't forget, tomorrow I have the first part of two-parter with Dave Moss. We'll be looking at riding posture and how we can improve that ourselves. And then we'll be back Wednesday with the regular show, more news, views, and tips. Meantime, don't forget to check out my regular posts, which are still going up on Facebook. And if you want to head over to the coffee page, there's the URL, coffee webcast.com. Survival skills. That'll take you to all the back issues of these Elevenses free posts, and you can access my back catalogue. 1914 start again. 2014 has already gone up 100 Facebook posts, and I will be adding to that again as time goes by. Right, so again, thank you very much indeed for watching today. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Don't forget, comment if you want to, anything that you want to say. I'm always interested to hear, and we'll be back tomorrow with Dave Moss. So thanks again for watching. Bye for now.